Hello everyone! I want to talk to you today about implementing SSR in the classroom, and there are three main things I want to talk about. First is classroom library, then your classroom routine, and finally your classroom benefits. And I want to talk to you about these things from the perspective of a teacher in the classroom who does SSR every day. So first, let me introduce you to myself. My name is Brooke Cunningham, that's me. I'm a teacher at Hardin Valley Academy in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm a graduate of the University of Tennessee, where I took Dr. Grunke's Young Adult Lit class, which really helped me in starting my classroom library. I have a blog, englishmafia.blogspot.com, where you can find this presentation and the resources mentioned in this presentation, as well as other resources for English teachers. Speaking of resources, today I'm using Prezi and Screencast-O-Matic to present this to you, because sadly I could not be here in person. So let's start talking about a classroom library. First of all, a classroom library really makes SSR low risk, personal, and successful. And as teachers, often we worry about SSR being successful in our classroom and being a worthwhile time. Having a classroom library is really the key to making SSR successful. Because what it does, like I said, is make it low risk. So students who might be stressed out by the idea of trying to look for a book that they will actually be interested in, they worry about the process of finding a book that's right for them and then being stuck with it for long periods of time. Having a classroom library allows students to browse books better and learn how to find books that they like. They can start with one book during your first day of SSR, and they can pick a different book their next day of SSR. They don't have to stick with the book they don't like. It also makes it low risk because students who don't see themselves as readers or even don't want others to see them as readers can have time in front of a book where they have to do it, it's an assignment, and they don't have to feel awkward for sitting there and reading. It also makes great personal connections in your classroom. You have to find out information about your students in order to pair them with a book. And it makes it personal because the books in your library often are books that you've bought yourself or that you've read yourself. And you can go to a student and say, hey, I think you'll like this book because I liked it and it has some of the things that I know about you in it. This creates a personal relationship with your student, as well as it lets that student create a personal relationship with that book. And that's a great step towards creating a lifelong reader. Next is how to maintain a classroom library in the craziness and busyness of being a teacher. So first, you want to keep current. So here are three really good resources to help you keep current on books for your library: Literature Map, Goodreads, and Books and Authors. So I'll show those to you now. So first is Literature Map, and this is the screen that you'll see when you get there. It's just literature-map.com, and what you do is type in the name of an author that either your student likes and you want to find them a book, or an author that you like and want to find other authors to fill your classroom library with. So I'm going to start with John Green because he's my favorite. And as you can see, it comes up with a really interesting visual of similar authors. So our author is in the middle, and the ones close around that author are the most similar, and farther away are a little less similar. And you can click on any one of these authors and it'll bring up another list of similar authors. So it's a really fun resource for you and your students. So next is Goodreads, and if you haven't been on Goodreads, you really need to get started. It's basically like Facebook for readers. And what this can do is you can get book recommendations from your teacher friends to help you in creating your classroom library. You can keep track of your own books that you've read right here, and you can explore different lists on their Listopia link and other links they have to help you find new books. And they have lots of great lists, and they always have something with young adult. Here at the bottom we have Best Young Adult Lit Books. So this is a great site for you to start exploring. It can also give you book recommendations based on what you've already read. So if you create a sub list of young adult lit books you like, it'll create recommendations based on those. Last is Books and Authors, which really helps in looking for books by genre. So for instance, I know that I don't have a whole lot of fantasy fiction. So if I click on fantasy fiction, it's going to turn up with really great books, but also really great sub-genres for fantasy fiction. And they're very specific. You can see we've got black magic, carnival, circus horror, coming of age. So you have lots of different subgenres. And if you click on one of those, it'll come up with some recommendations in that subgenre. So students can find books that they're interested in if they're very specific, or you can find some to add to your classroom library. So those are some great ways to keep current, but you also need to keep track of your books. So here's a great resource to use. This is from Classroom Organizer. So Classroom Organizer is going to be here at NCTE, so you can find out more information about them there. But here's just how I use it in the classroom. This is from booksource.com. And what this is it's great because it's not only a website, but it's also an app for your phone. And what you can do, if you look at your library, so you can see here that this is a list of all the books in my classroom library, and this has been created. All I had to do was scan in the barcodes of the books in my library, and it has the title, the author, the lexile, and page count for a lot of these books. So it's really great, and it also allows you to create reports on your books, your lexile level report, or you can do reports on which books get checked out the most. Another really great feature is being able to export this list to Excel. So what you can do with that, as I'll talk about later, is you'll have a readily available list to give parents when they ask about your classroom library. The student page is another great feature. Your students can come here with a password and they can check out or return any books in your classroom library. This is a great way to keep track, and it's really simple. All they have to do is search for their name and search for the book they're wanting to check out or return. You can also check out books with the app on your smartphone by scanning barcodes, but this is just as easy. So again, here are some great resources for maintaining your classroom library, even in the hectic school day. So now let's move on to classroom routine, and it's extremely important to be able to create a great routine for SSR to make sure that it works successfully in your classroom. So let's start with covering yourself when it comes to challenged books in your library. And I do this by just stating everything in my syllabus. So here's examples of what I might put in my syllabus to cover myself for these books. What I do is I make sure I start by telling the parents why we're doing SSR, what their students are supposed to gain from this experience. I then move on to talking about my classroom library and emphasizing that it's their choice. They can pick something from my library, they can pick something from home. They're not required to read anything from the library. I also mention how students are going to be assessed because parents are interested in that. And I finish by restating that it's their choice. They can pick what they want to read. And again, telling them that that list of the books is available if they would like it. I have not had parents ask for that list yet, but if they were to ask, I would, of course, give it to them because it's there. Using that book source list is really easy. And if they had any concerns about the books, I could ask them to mark those books, and I can make sure their student was not reading one of those books. The next important part, probably the most important part, is motivating your students to actually participate in SSR. So what I do is I allow for differentiation. So that means some students may be more comfortable listening to music while they read. I let them do that. Some students may want to sit on the floor or lean up against a wall. Try to make them comfortable in this time for reading. That may even mean for some students they might be reading magazines or graphic novels or even audiobooks. I do allow that for some students in order for them to really gain a love for reading. Next, you want to consistently pair students with books. Don't be content to let a student just sit there and not be disruptive in class. Make sure that you really put the effort in to find a book a student will enjoy, and they really will appreciate that. Next is model. You want to communicate to your students that you find this time important. So don't grade or check attendance during this time. You need to read along with your students. I read and walk around at the same time so that I can monitor my students, but I am usually very absorbed in my book, and my students are too. Next, always maintain a positive attitude. Your students will pick up on your attitude towards SSR, and it should be easy to maintain a positive attitude because it's a nice time when you get to do what you love, which is read, and it's quiet. It's just a great time during your day. And finally, assessments, because we know students will always ask, how are we going to be graded on this? So here are 2 assessments I use that are pretty simple and fun so that students are still intrinsically motivated to read. First is this book talk. They will present this when they finish a book, but it's a really easy visual, and they give a description of the book and why they liked it. And this is great because you can put this in your classroom, and future classes may decide that they might be interested in that book because they see what another student wrote about it. For a daily assessment, here is a log, and it can be folded in like a pamphlet and used as a bookmark, and students just keep track of what they read. And that's really easy, and also good for keeping track of what they read for yourself. And finally, classroom benefits. We know there are tons of classroom benefits to SSR as far as reading skills go, but here's the best one. One of the proudest moments is when I got this note that said that this student, I had helped her realize how much she missed reading. And it's sad that in elementary and middle school, we often, they get lots of reading for fun, but in high school we don't get that. And SSR is a great time for you to bridge that gap between middle school and adulthood and make sure your students are lifelong readers. Alright, thank you for listening to Implementing SSR in the Classroom, and if you have any questions, please contact me on my blog and my email address. Thank you very much.